Two, one. You are live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Endgame. I'm being held here against my will. This to my right and your left would be Poplopo. To my left, your right would be Artist 3D, and it, Verana, is in the center, directly behind me. Now, we are going to be talking about the expansion of consciousness and the mind.
Ooh,
All
yeah.
right. Thank you, Dragon. Oh, goodness.
Excellent.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
Very
that.
good, very good.
Thank you.
I mean,
I'm glad you brought
want
that
to
up.
clarify that was voluntary as far as I knew, but yeah, hey, there's some situations I guess we can't control. Um, hi everyone, welcome to Endgame. I am joined this week by Itverana and Artist 3D, who are members of the VR chat community. Both of you, I think, are world creators and artists, as well as enthusiasts, I think, about our topic tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking about about essentially human consciousness. So that's really a big topic, and part of the difficulty is it's a very vague and ambiguous topic. But we're going to kind of ease into it and get there. Sorry, one note: if you're going to adjust your headset, please mute yourself first. Very loud. Okay, so let's first, before we really dive in, let's get an introduction of the people who are here tonight. So, Idvarana, why don't you tell us about yourself and kind of your interest in this topic and kind of your journey with it so far? Oh no!
Or not.
No.
Wow, that's amazing. He is a man of the
Does
void.
Verona even
He
exist?
has reached the highest level of
Not anymore.
He ascended to another
absolute
realm.
elsewhere nothingness. Okay.
No, that's what you call
Okay,
stage fright.
right.
That's stage fright.
Perfect timing.
Right at that moment. Okay, well, I'll shall
Okay,
I?
Artist 3D, go
continue?
ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I've been around for a while in VR chat, probably since the DK2 days. Okay, so and VR chat at that time was a small group of enthusiasts who were really, for me, right at the cutting edge of where I felt VR was going, because rather than it being strictly, because it was being marketed at the time as mainly a new gaming platform. And when I went into my first VR chat world, I was really, I mean, I was overwhelmed with joy to find that it was much more social, much more, uh, it just seemed more peaceful and more creative oriented than just getting in a spaceship and, taking out more enemies. So for me, it was kind of an advanced platform. I had come from earlier VR platforms like Second Life and Active Worlds. So I spent many years working in VR since about 1995 when I got my first job working in VR.
Oh.
So moving, there he is. So I'm introducing myself here. Brandon, you can come in later. Okay, are you there?
Oh,
I don't know, he seems a little disoriented.
Here. Okay, yeah.
But since then,
right.
I just uploaded, I think, my 8th world to VR chat, and I have to thank one of the more interesting people I've met in VR chat, GM3, okay, for convincing me from a millennial perspective that sharing your creativity wasn't necessarily letting it go. And for me, it's always been like my first 2 applications were designed specifically for the Oculus Rift, and I had no one had a chance to see them because the Oculus Rift just had such a small sampling of people who had the technology. So when it came into VR chat and GM3 was starting to build his first galleries, which I was honored to be able to contribute pieces to and kind of help in the discussion of how galleries can be laid out and things. He convinced me, why don't we bring some of those worlds in here and share them with people? You know, I come from a
So
generation of more competitive generation, so I was like, you just give it away? Is that what you do? And he said, yeah, it's fun, you know. I said, okay, I'll do it. So that's how I
so
arrived in VR chat. And
you brought a ton of art into VR chat, and you know what I've seen of your worlds. They're very like interesting, thoughtful, like explorations of experience, and I kind of want to talk about that a bit later. Though for those of you who stick around after the show tonight, we will be going to one of your new worlds and checking it out for the first time. This is one that's centered around music, right?
yeah, all my worlds are built around my music. That I'm first and foremost a composer and songwriter, and it seemed ideal that virtual reality is able to bring together sound, visuals. So I'm an illustrator from way back, and so my worlds are basically created from the words in my songs, or vice versa. And words and songs inspire the visuals. So I'm working in tandem, quite often plagiarizing myself and my previous work in an archive of things I've done over the years.
Well, I really look forward to that. Oh man, I was just about to.
Oh, that's
Okay,
sad.
you know what? I mean, the next time Verona comes back, like they have to just jump in and like introduce
Okay,
themselves before they.
we'll let him take his.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. So we'll after the show we'll go into my latest world, which is one of the smallest worlds that I've ever created. Most of my worlds are album length in size. This one that I just released is called Piece for the Puzzle, and it's just based on a song I wrote the other day, and I just thought I'm going to make a quick little illustration.
Before VR, what were your kind of biggest experiences when it came to either using technology or just existing in the exploration of consciousness and the limits of the human mind?
Well, I cannot tell a lie. I have a psychedelic background, uh, probably 10 years of magic mushrooms and various various
Okay, good. You've got a good
altered
reference for
states.
comparison then.
Yeah. I pretty much spent the 70s in a sort of progressive state of exploring. Oh, here we go.
Okay, I want to get into that, but Ivana, now that you're here, hurry, introduce yourself. Quick.
Hi, I'm Ivana. I'm going through a tropical storm right now.
Oh.
No. Well, yeah, but I don't even know what the format is. I got into VR because I was looking for new experiences, and it was kind of like new experiences in general. I didn't really have like the idea of consciousness on the mind, but like getting into it quickly, I kind of realized the effect that it had on me and a lot of other people. Not only just socially, well, I guess it translated socially, but kind of it like started from like internally, like it kind of created a shift in perspective in me and other people, and it just kind of, I don't know, I got really into that. And I come from like a background of I don't know how to put it, Eastern-ish views, like from martial arts to philosophies and religion and meditation and all that stuff. So I was really interested in kind of seeing how I could translate some of those interests here, and so I kind of.
I noticed you brought movement, right? Like you were like a GIF from a long time ago has you doing like martial arts moves in
Oh yeah.
VR, and you've I think you said you damaged some equipment doing some.
Yeah,
really
I don't have a
in the
ceiling
room.
fan anymore. I've gone through a TV. My desk is broken. But anyway.
But the concept of movement, though, isn't your name related to it?
Oh
What is your
yeah,
name again?
the root word in Sanskrit means to travel or to walk or to move. So yeah, kind of. I didn't really intend for that. I just thought the name was cool. But it ended up working because when I got in, that's all I really wanted to do was move. So I didn't really feel like talking at first. I was like, I'm just gonna move because hey, I've got controllers. It seems way more effective at communicating with people now that I can move my hands. I played like so many video games in the past, but never could I like interact with people so well that I didn't even feel like I needed to speak to them. I thought it was fun at first, just try to like do charades and stuff like that, and I guess
Yeah,
that
you
just kind
didn't
of
talk
turned
for
into
a
the
long
thing.
time, but
Hmm.
you were very distinctive as a character in VR chat. Like everyone kind of recognized you from your movement, which I think is interesting. Um,
Mm.
okay, so we're here to talk about the expansion of human consciousness, and that is something that's been obviously like the limits of the human mind have been explored through time immemorial since before recorded history. We've been kind of looking at uh, the different things. Mm, we've been looking at our internal world and our internal experience, and it's a kind of an enormous mystery to us. It's certainly a mystery to science. It's a mystery in a lot of ways because we don't understand how it works. We don't understand uh, why it works, but we can explore our internal world through all sorts of methods. So um, through meditation practices, um, through dreaming,
Right. Yeah.
lucid dreaming, through drugs, as was mentioned, through other things like experiences that we can, in some ways, share with each other, like books, for example. When we were talking about this topic, books kind of seem like a trip of their own, where you dive into a world that someone else created, and as you're reading a piece of fiction, you hallucinate vividly for a while until it's over, and then you have this entire experience that you've gone through the course of um, uh, that kind of reading that verbal
Yeah.
illustration. Um, so
So I think that that's kind of evolutionary, actually starting with books and the first shared otherworldly experiences that other people were writing about.
okay,
Yeah.
Certainly, so I see
is
that as
there
an initial virtual reality. Basically, a book is when you sort of take off and it happens.
It's like the
hey,
virtual reality of imagination because it doesn't.
hey, excuse me, we're in the middle of a show right now. If you'd like, you can stick around.
Um, yeah.
Um,
The books seem to kind of be they're like the virtual reality of imagination because they're not really providing you with any new experience. They're kind of just arranging words and the concepts in your mind so well, and it's like an art form. That's why I love it. But it's so well that you kind of are able to imagine what the creator is imagining too. Yeah, because that's what imagination is. It's not really a new experience. It's kind of well, it is a new experience, but
well, yeah, it
it's a new
becomes
experience based off of
yeah,
old experiences. It's not like
right.
confronting reality and being like taking some drugs and like the chemicals do things to your brains, and all of a sudden you're seeing things you've never seen before in your life, and you're like, what is that? But it's
Right, so there's multiple ways to gain experience. Like,
right.
you can you can face it directly, or you can have it created through your imagination, based on various elements that already exist within your imagination, which I think kind of is how experience itself works. Like from the time you're born, like it builds on itself and becomes more and
The
more
thing,
complex.
if I
Hmm.
may say, the thing that makes virtual reality quite unique, and I've been through a number of I've been through books, I've been through early psychedelic experiences and later ones. But the thing I found about virtual reality, when I finally put the headset on, and this was after, waiting to get it in the mail, um, the immediacy of it was something that struck me. It was completely uncanny how immediate it affected my situational awareness. Unlike a drug, which was more of an altered state, which was an altered state of what I was already experiencing, I put the headset on and I had a whole new situational awareness of another completely different dimension of perception. And I think that the immediacy of VR is what's making it quite compelling for people.
Yeah, I think so. And there he goes again. You mentioned evolution, and I feel like virtual reality has been a long time coming. Like, it was conceived of way, way before it was ever developed, but people kind of knew it was on its way, and I think always wanted it to be on its way. And it seems like an obvious choice. Like eventually, you know, it's not going to be these cumbersome headsets. It's going to be we can put ourselves into this experience very rapidly, I think, and very the immediacy will just get closer and closer and closer to it'll take
probably some kind of implant.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. Something I wanted to mention is that we, in terms of our brains as our brains could be described as virtual reality devices on their own, right? Like, they're taking input from the environment, and we're the result of that is this experience that we're having inside of ourselves that is, we can see things, and we can see an environment, and we can feel, and we can construct
it's our
the
nature
world around us internally.
It's our nature. You know, we have
and we do it by
3D bifocal
we do it by
view
nature,
of things.
and we do it without, like, it's one of the easiest things for our minds to do. Like, when we're dreaming, like, that is what the mind does, is it's creating a reality for us, and then putting us in it. I think probably because the mind does that, like, that's like its default operation, you know.
Yeah, dreams are great that way. I mean, I see them as valid forms of experience, even no matter how bizarre they get. I still get something out of them, so therefore they have meaning to me.
Well, if you feel that dreams are, or if you feel that VR is a real experience, then of course dreams are going to be a real experience, because you are the one experiencing them, and so.
Is there any such thing as a fake experience, though?
Yeah, there isn't.
That's
so basically, yeah, VR is as real as anything else. Let's put it that way.
It's like saying, can you experience non-experience? It's like, that's just a bunch of fancy words. Anyway.
Right. No, you bring up that's a really
another
good
whole
point.
subject, isn't it?
Well, it kind of relates to this, because when we're talking about, like, the evolution of human consciousness, we kind of get into this perspective, because it's one of the things that people who claim to be on these elevated states of consciousness kind of see, is they don't really recognize, a lot of people in certain things, and it's usually in the drug or meditation area, where people stop recognizing things as real or not real, and kind of see it all as the same thing. Usually it really depends on the experience that they're having, but usually there's like this common theme of, well, it's all experience, it's all just coming to me. There is no such thing as like a right or wrong experience, or a false or true experience. Like, it's all just experience. That's the whole idea of gaining this new conscious perspective, is that it's just different perspective. It's a different or higher perspective, and
it has somewhat more potential than previous.
It can. It could be.
Previous tools that we've used. No, but it has this incredible presence to it. This sense of, that you have just put this thing on your head. I remember you were talking about the fact that we dreamed of VR before it happened, and certainly anybody who has ever watched a Star Trek Next Generation series knows just how powerful those virtual reality holodecks were all about. When I put the headset on, my first sense was, wow, I don't need to dedicate a whole room to this. The virtual reality is my perspective. So efficient.
Has a whole other universe inside of itself.
I told my wife, I said, I just need a closet, thanks. Just put the headset on. I'm good. I'm everywhere. No problem.
So you've kind of alluded to this. What do you guys think that? I mean, you mentioned the immediacy of it, but what is that? What VR offers, kind of, when it comes to, I guess, exploring the limits of what you are, what consciousness is, what a mind is. Like, what does VR offer us that wasn't available previously?
Huh. I said something about this and I forgot what it was.
Well, I think one of the key things, one of the very key things, which makes it far and above more effective than a book, television, or anything that you're kind of trying to imply otherwise, is that I can take you into one of my worlds as an artist and literally share the same experience with you. Like,
I see,
there it
yeah.
is. I've illustrated, like, for me, my art and my music has never been more clear than through this medium, because I'm able to juxtapose the images that illustrate the music, and the music is describing the imagery. So
That
for
makes
me,
sense.
it's just been a profound sudden ability to, this is what I mean by this song, this is what I mean by this image,
Right.
as an artist.
Well,
Because I mean, I've often showed my work to people and they go like, you know, okay, well, I'm making of it what I will. But this is far more clandestine in the way it replaces your situational awareness with another person's vision and perspective. So in that sense, there are some negatives to that if you throw people into experiences that are not necessarily
I wasn't thinking about VR when I was saying those things. VR has been nothing but positive for me.
Well,
I
me
was thinking
too.
of some other things. Yeah.
But there's a lot of
I'm sure
apps
there
I
are some
don't
negatives. That's
download.
why
I don't download a lot of apps, like How to Freak Myself Out.
Sorry, just a second. Catapult, do you have a comment?
Yeah, a sim racer actually said it best. It's like the difference between either having a single monitor or a triple screen setup for sim racing. He said it best. He said, triple screens or a single screen is driving the car. VR is being inside the car, driving the car. You're actually there.
It provides that sense of you're in the three-dimensional space, which is one
You're
thing
there.
that
I think
if you compare
it's
that
the
to the
level.
other. Yeah, I mean, like,
Sure.
as far as like experiencing games and applications go, that is what VR has to offer that those other things don't. But when it comes to other things that are meant for the expansion of consciousness, they all kind of do the same thing. I mean, if you're meditating or if you're on a drug, you are completely aware of where you are in three dimensional. That is one of the biggest things, that you experience. So I wouldn't say that for VR that's one of the biggest things that it has to offer. I would say that it kind of compared to the other things, like it kind of does something in my mind. If we're gonna go between, like, I'll use meditation as like the staple of like expansion of consciousness through effort or discipline, I guess you'd say, and then drugs are in the use of substances or outside sources. The thing that it kind of does that both of them kind of do, it's like it does, like what you said, it kind of just puts you in there immediately into the environment, kind of like a drug would. But unlike the drug, you don't experience any kind of internal brain working. It's still technically outside information coming in, and you are kind of experiencing it from inside. Like you aren't on some kind of chemical that's forcing it.
It is first person.
It's forcing you into a new. It's weird because it's forcing you into a new perspective that as far as your ears and your eyes are concerned, you might as well be on a drug, right? Like you feel like you're here, but it's not, and it's not changing you. So unlike that, it's like it's almost like the meditation where you still kind of get to kind of experience it and decide how you're going to take it. Like that's why people come in here looking for something to do something. They don't just get in here and, like, on a drug they just experience something crazy. They're on here and they have some kind of like path. Like some people come here to experience something, some people are kind of
hold on before you interrupt. Catapult has another comment.
No, it's like the thing is, it's a level of immersion. Whether it's emulating something real like sim racing or being in the fantasy world, you're actually in the world. Like an example, in sim racing, when I run VR, it's a lot easier to tell where the corner is than it is on a monitor. It's a lot easier, so you can brake later and get back on the power as you're going around the corner that much sooner, so it makes you quicker and your lap times are faster. When I'm in VR chat here and exploring worlds that people create, it's like, whoa, like some of them are just, wow, it's like walking into somebody's imagination. It's just totally mind-blowing. But you are in that world. It's immersive. You're in there. It's not just sitting there looking at it. You're actually in the thing.
Yeah, exactly. If you turn around, it's behind you.
I think that's one of the significant parts here is that, like, subjective experience is it's a very isolated experience. You have yours, I have mine. Never are they going to touch. But I think the efforts of different pieces of the world are trying to, they find it becomes meaningful to try to merge those as much as possible. Like when you bring your world in, you're trying to provide a subject, like a very
An objective, yeah, it's kind of almost a more, you're trying to objectify a personal experience. That's what artists have always done, though. You paint a painting, you're trying to create an image that somehow you're hoping will send an objective view of some kind of how you see things. Self-expression is that way.
Yeah, I think it is
abstract artists don't care. Abstract artists are, you make it up, you dream it up. But if you're really trying to experience and share something, I've found that the VR medium is incredible. I mean, the things I've seen in the worlds, Durs is created in that. I mean, you're there. You're like, oh, now I really get where you're coming from.
Okay, so
I have a question. Sorry, go ahead first.
No, we need to move along.
Yeah.
So I'm going to So talking about this topic is difficult for reasons that we've kind of mentioned, which is that it's hard to share information about internal experiences, right? Where we can build a world, we can write a book, we can create a religion, but none of these things really convey exactly what the subjective experience is like. And there are several models that are that you can attempt to make, and there's a few of them here. This one is about the structure of cognitive consciousness from kind of a
well, it's more of a hierarchy, showing a hierarchy.
Yeah, right. From a hierarchical system perspective. This one I found has an interesting model of what the internal space looks like. So that there's a conscious spotlight, which is the attention, and then there's the internal audience, and then there's all these contexts that are structured around your, that you've structured your consciousness around, that are based on your memory and all those things. Let's see. This one is another. This is a more abstract one about you've got consciousness, and it is affected by various points of view, and these points of view are themselves focused in from information coming in from unconscious beliefs, subconscious feelings, conscious thoughts. And then this one is the Jungian model, so it includes the collective unconscious in the model of the mind, and where the self is in relation to that, and the ego and the shadow. So pretty interesting model there. But there's and then there's a ton of other ways to view this. There's as many kind of more bare bones models there are like this. There's tons of mystical models as well that are based on either religious belief or mystic belief. And
the point is that everyone's got their own view on it.
Right. So
everyone's got a view of it.
So we can't really make an attempt to define it, or at least we can, but it's a difficult process to define.
Right. We may be conscious of all of those different methods, but I think we can all agree that we do share an awareness of all these different methods. That's what we do share.
Maybe.
That's the one thing we are aware that there are all these different options. So, and I think from that perspective, that can be the thing that joins kind of unifies.
I want to ask you guys if so. And I'm going to ask each of you in your exploration and personal progression and things that you've learned along the way, shifts that you've had or changes that you've had, without as hard as these things are to describe and to define, what do you guys find important when it comes to this type of exploration, the kind of expansion of your own consciousness? how do you know when you found something meaningful? How do you know when you've found something new that that is in this area? Verona first.
That's a good question. I mean, just speaking from my personal experience, and I think when it comes to this topic, that's all we're ever going to be able to do. Like when I experiment with these types of things, and I guess specifically with virtual reality, I don't feel like I ever try to get a new experience. Like I feel like the most important thing with trying to get a new experience is like, don't try to like, how do I put this? Like I think something that I struggle with is like trying to pre-conceptualize a new experience. And so I often find that one of the most important things for trying to experiment with this type of thing, with experimenting with what consciousness is or how I can expand it, is that I kind of just have to be open or be blank to kind of do it. And that's why I'm really into the meditation thing, is because I need to be receptive and not like imposing. So I kind of need to like free myself up of a lot of chains that I might be holding on to or something, you know?
Now, what is it that you're trying to be receptive to when you do this?
That's the thing, is that I don't know. You don't know what the next experience is going to be, you know? That's the thing about a new experience, is that it's not going to be a thing. And we're talking about new experiences. Now, if I'm talking about consciousness as it is already within me, I guess I can kind of be receptive to okay, I'm gonna get mixed up here. It depends on what I'm looking for, because if I'm just trying to be aware of myself,
you want to leave room for the experience, so you're maintaining a blank of some kind, so that there's actually room for a new experience.
Maybe. I mean, when it's the difference between like trying to experience something new and be conscious in a different way versus like trying to explain how I already am conscious. Like if I'm trying to explain my consciousness in one of these maps as it already is within my mind, I would stop being receptive and I would change it to kind of formulate something, you know?
Yeah,
I'll try to define it. I'll try to put it into some kind of conceptual box that you can all hand it to. And fundamentally, I don't feel like I'm ever going to be able to do that well enough to where I could properly explain it. And so I guess one of the important things is about explaining, even if you're just explaining your consciousness or an aspect of consciousness to somebody, is that you can't just put it into a box of concepts and hand it to them. You have to have some kind of medium to help them experience it. You know, like, let's go do something to show you what I'm talking about, you know, like it's never gonna, like, words are just never gonna be enough for me. So
Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay,
I don't know if that even answered it, but
yeah. Go ahead, Artist 3D.
well, I'm a little more maybe simplistic or pragmatic in the analysis of a given event or sensation I'm having. Generally, I go from the sort of realm of wanting to find meaning in everything, and what does it mean? You know, so-called unrelated events. The Jungian model there is closer to my sense of finding synchronistic elements that, you know, appear to coincide with my own thinking patterns, so that I can read even a Mad magazine and get as much wisdom out of it as I would, you know, an ancient piece of literature. Because the relationship I'm making with meaning is a constantly changing words in the book kind of phenomenon, so that when you read the book 10 years later, you get a whole new panorama of meaning out of it. So I don't get too complicated about how I am expanding my consciousness, because I already know that for every thing I bring meaning to, I am expanding my conscious awareness of its value to me on multiple levels. So I'm not getting too complicated there with that. I kind of see my sense impressions. I really relate to this pyramid, because I do, at the ground level, feel that it's through motion and sensations that you begin to get the impulses for for an idea. And then from that, the idea may become an opinion you hold for a while, or barring that, it might even become a conviction if you hold that opinion long enough. Sometimes opinions, if you hold on to them too long, they become a conviction. And then before you know it, that conviction will become a belief system. And you then become isolated from new ideas because you've already established a belief system. And it all started innocently enough with a little sense impression that gave you an idea that you had just perceived something. So, for me, I'm a bit like Verana in terms of clean slate every morning, wake up, boom. I have a sense of what I want to fill my day with. And if at the end of the day I can bring something out of nothing, then I feel like I've accomplished something. And it's not an addiction, but it is definitely a fixation to create.
That's a good fixation to have for sure. And I think these next pictures are from you. Oh yeah, so these are some pictures from your journeys as you've been going about in VR. So I think
I spend an a lot of time in Google Earth VR traveling because I don't have the budget. I don't have the budget.
Right.
And this is this is the idea of being absolutely elsewhere. As soon as you put the headset on, grab the planet, zoom in. This is Pitcairn's Island. I just bring it up because it's one of those anomalies that most of us will never find. It's in the exact center of the Pacific Ocean, where you cannot see any of the other continents. It's dead center. I don't know how the guys that mutinied on the Bounty ended up here, but they ended up crashing here and building an entire culture. They have a newsletter, and their entire reality is totally tripped out. And when you go in Google Earth VR, you can go down to the docks and you can see their streets, and it's just an awesome thing. On the other hand, you've got here the ability to go to geographical phenomenon in the world, like the crater in Arizona. I mean, I have flown around that for a couple of hours, hanging out on the ridge. In Google Earth VR, you can drag the sun around and bring the stars up and everything. It's really quite amazing. And then, you can go to strange places which you'd never probably get to. Is like, this is Senegal in Africa. And right there, you get this sense. I've labeled these being absolute elsewhere, virtual travel, and empathy, because this is a culture I spent a couple hours walking down the streets in and feeling great empathy for the cultural shock I was experiencing. For them, but also for the North American sensitivity to the shocking way people live throughout the world when you're not brought up in basically a technological society.
I think it's probably worth mentioning that, like, the expansion of consciousness kind of includes. I think it includes the expansion of awareness, including the awareness of the world around us, of the people
other
around
people's
us.
Cultures, and this is
right.
I've spent 2 or 3 hours just wandering the streets of Hong Kong. I live in the country, so for me to wander the streets of Hong Kong in Google Earth VR at street level for 2 hours, you come out of that with oh my God, like this is like, this could be the future if you're not careful. Everywhere.
I think when it comes to awareness of the world, like the internet in general kind of enables that in a conceptual way. We can read all about the world, and we can get in conversations all around the world. But VR definitely has the added aspect of being able to inhabit these different places, at least virtually or synthetically.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it's just kind of thought, like, with the internet, we've always had the ability to talk with people in other cultures and kind of interact with them in some way. But it seems kind of small, but this is something that I noticed when I'm kind of experiencing that in VR, is that when you start to kind of communicate with other people in different cultures, you kind of also not only notice like the talking, but there's also a lot of culture and movement too, in the way people behave, their body motions, where they're looking, if they're looking directly at you, or if they don't look directly at you. And I mean, that kind of has a lot to do with just the person to person. But when you hang out with enough people of like a certain culture, you can start to compare and contrast those things. And there's a lot of differences, you know, like some cultures are just very direct near you and up in your face, and you experience that. Like some people are just, you know, much more comfortable up closer. And then like everyone, you know, from America is like, we have our personal bubbles. We have to stay inside. And some people from other cultures just come up to you and they've got your arm around you like nothing. And I don't mind it, but you know, like a lot of other places in the world are just fine with that. But that's just something else that.
Speaking of movement, are you crouched over in real life? Because your avatar is.
Hold on, that's the hip tracker. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'll fix that.
All right. And these are more images from artists that Artist3D has taken from your adventures in VR chat, it looks like.
Yes, most of these are. And I'm just illustrating here that I now have waterfront real estate. I've expanded my consciousness of, you know, having property I could never afford. So I have my sort of beach house there, which is cool. And then, you know, the surreal altered states, which I don't need a drug for anymore, are, if I want to satisfy that, I can go off into AE Emotions World and see that, or 1001, who's given us the ability now to fly through fractals in real time. That's pretty abstract. This is me and my friends hanging out in the shuttle in my Islands in Space World. We literally orbited the Earth 3 times. And I think what I could say about that is it's the sort of democratizing access to experience. That's what I call that in terms of expanding consciousness. We've basically, you know, you used to have to be an ex-fighter pilot to become an astronaut. You know, there are prerequisites to even getting into space. And, you know, for us to be able to create these kinds of simulated experiences, my Islands in Space is a total fantasy. But there are applications that take you up into the the International Space Station. You know, there's plenty that explore the solar system. These are things that, when I'm sitting in a ship on the other side of Mars, you know, I can see my breath. You know, they're making me feel like I'm experiencing that, and I'm seeing all the latest texture maps from NASA. To me, it's, you know, I don't care what anybody says back on Earth. You know, to my friends back on Earth, I wish you were here. That's all I can say.
So following on that, I wanted to ask the audience if you'd like to share if there's any experiences, like emotional or mental or perceptual experiences that you've experienced while in VR that were completely new to you, that you've never had the opportunity to experience in real life, that was meaningful to you in some way. If anybody would like to share, just as an example, like there's a treehouse world here in VR chat that I went to
1001. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, is that what it?
Yeah, that's 1001's world.
Yeah, it's probably that one. And it
what's
uses
crazy
a
is that
kind of,
his world is 1 meg in size, and this world here is 450 megs.
Yeah. Well,
and his are so infinite. His are so infinite. It's amazing.
Yeah, his uses like fractal shaders to literally like render out into infinity, and then you can go in there and explore. And I mean, I've been in VR for a while, so like exploring new environments
awesome.
is not new, but yeah, the iterated complexity of fractals was just mind blowing. Like I just wanted to keep going in it forever and ever and ever.
I think to your point of what people can experience here that is kind of unique, and I think we're all doing it right now, is we are here in a vicarious way. I'm standing in my studio at home, of course, but I'm here in you know, attending a talk show. Okay, this is an experience, you know, that in itself is
where we're in 2 places at once.
Yeah, back to your question. Is anybody experiencing anything in VR that they can't do otherwise? And it is the vicarious recreation of ourselves, or perhaps even our better selves, in a sense that we're able to project. You know, like you're not hearing all about my problems in the real world. I'm talking in a world where those things don't exist.
Yeah, we got a line going
here. Yeah, that are wanting to talk about their experiences.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this was a line.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of absurd, and it's anyone's fault that I know about it, but there's a couple worlds in VRC where you can be like super tiny and go in someone's mouth and then down their throat and then
Oh, okay, that's not what I was
Oh, I
expecting.
haven't seen that.
Yeah. There's,
That's some next level stuff.
yeah,
weird.
Oh man, I want to see that.
it's quite a thing.
Uh-huh,
Sorry,
okay.
Zarni, we're talking later.
It's not me.
So there was one. It was a while ago. I think he had attended actually one of the shows before, but he had made a world. It was a space run, and basically you had this like almost zero gravity feel, and it was backed by a tune of vaporwave is what they call it. It's very symphonic, and the feeling it would give from just like jumping, and you would cross these gigantic chasms that were infinitely deep, and it gave me a sense of like almost falling. You would get like the feeling of vertigo, something that you shouldn't have whatsoever, but just like you felt like you were part of the situation, and it was very like it's hard to put it into words.
What I love about that is that it's similar to a dream in which, during a dream, your body is just lying there on the bed, nothing's happening, but in your mind, all these sensations are occurring, and you can induce that even in, waking life through these virtual experiences. You can feel vertigo because you're high up and everything. VR only works because our mind is creating the experience, as it's happening again.
Yeah, exactly.
Electronia.
I'm actually a really big fan of VR worlds. I actually find myself going back to them a lot. Because I feel like there's always something new you can actually kind of find in a lot of them. Like, the islands in space I found, I knew about the 3 islands, but I didn't know about the spaceship at first. And then I sometimes when you made a home too, I see. I sometimes go in there, just check things out, then I see if you made something new. But yeah, I actually really like your world a lot. Like I would say keep it up.
You.
But
Thank you.
But
One of
yeah,
the reasons
VR
they're complex is that they're trying to support a certain amount of attention to a soundtrack. So if I make the world big enough, I feel like you'll hear the entire album.
But
did you have something else, Electronic?
yeah, just one more thing. That's the cool thing about VR. You can make almost pretty much any experience possible. I mean, you could, regardless if it's like, artistic, or I actually went to this world that makes your whole screen go like crazy, but it was somebody else's world. I forgot what it was, but yeah.
Cool, thank you.
One thing that really got me into VR chat specifically was that how easy it is to just, like, you create a 3D model, you rig it, and then get it in the game. And I've been working on this avatar and doing several iterations, and I do get this sort of idea that I'm, like, sculpting or, modifying my own body in real time, like something I would never be able to do to, this extent I can do in the virtual, in reality. Like, if I wanted to have a tattoo, I can just, scribble on a texture, or if I want to have a 7th finger, I just extrude. Or if I wanted to have,
you don't have to commit
exactly
to
this. And that just feels so
do you
cool
feel
to
like
me.
you have another finger?
Like, I haven't done that yet, so I've been in that regard, I've been pretty tame about, having like these, how should I put it, like these outlandish accessories, or like organic accessories, I should say. If you get how I
Great
mean.
avatar. Great avatar, though.
You get to, yeah, it's very well made. You get to inhabit, like, you basically get to remake yourself however you want. And I think one of the, I think one of the kind of culminations of personal power is when you get to, when you get to the point where you know yourself well, you can stop being just a receiver for a bunch of experiences, and just be the result of everything that you've experienced, and start to create yourself, and to have you know, to kind of self-author and pick and choose which perspective you're going to apply to any given situation, rather than just being reactive. And I think that's interesting as like a version of that. It's a very physical, like visceral version of that, to you know, modify your own body in the effort of you know, altering yourself. I think that can be
Like
really powerful.
I think like having, you know, just looking down and seeing my own body, and if I were to like change avatar to something, let's say more cutesy, then it would be easy for me to act that way, to express that way.
Role-playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sort of becomes natural to me. I'm not really sure how to put it, but just being able to modify my exterior and broadcast it to everyone is, you know, something that you pretty much can only do in the virtual. I guess you can sort of do it to a very limited degree with, you know, choosing your own avatar on a forum. That's, you know, one way of doing the exact same thing. But
one day a year,
for Halloween.
One day a year you
but
get to be
in VR,
somebody.
it's ramped up to 11.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, it's like you pretty much are, for all intents and purposes, in socializing and behaving in the environment, you are the avatar that you wear, or you just are.
I am.
And that's
okay.
You are. You are Jar Jar Binks on acid.
It's true. Okay, we're reaching a time limit. Stokel, did you have something? Or are you just?
Well, it was just an addition to what he was talking about.
Okay.
It was not to mention just the avatars and stuff, how it has expanded how people express themselves. It also it shows other things, because to be able to do that, he had to do a lot of learning beforehand. And one of the things is the VR chat has really driven me to learn new things. I mean, even just learning how to write shaders was one of the newest things I've been doing lately, and it's very fun learning new things. Relearning math, because I forgot 90% of my math. That's the biggest hurdle, is relearning all the math that I have that I haven't used.
Thank you, high school's math
what
teachers.
What was interesting about that?
Yeah, it's like, what's interesting about math? You can make shaders. You should have remembered it.
They should have taught it. They should have taught it.
Yeah, they should have taught it.
Right.
They should teach it.
You can make cool stuff in VR. That's why you need math. Like when
Exactly.
Question.
But it's driven me to research things and just work on different things much more than what I would usually do in most video games. Most video games, I'm just playing to play. VR chat, I'm learning to be able to play and to express different things I want to be able to do. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah,
because like when I first started out, all my avatars were really bad. Still pretty bad now, but I'm getting better.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like it.
But yeah, when I first started out, I didn't even know how to do Vizims. I barely even looked up videos. Like, when I first started, I tried to figure out the easiest way of doing it. Now, I'm trying to actually learn everything about avatar creation and about shaders and about worlds. And I'm even going to be off for 2 weeks from work. So I'm going to be taking those 2 weeks to even learn how to code shaders instead of using Shader Forge. So I'm actually going to try and learn the coding language from scratch. So that's one of the other things I'm going to be doing. So it's expanding horizons. That's the biggest thing with VR.
Right. Being thorough about what you know and what you discover can open up. Yeah, it opens up all sorts of things.
So that's all I want to say.
All right. Thank you, Stokel. And thanks, everyone. Do either of you have any thoughts that you'd like to conclude with?
Yeah, I mean, we never even really mentioned like where we think VR is taking us in consciousness. Like, does anyone have a thought on that? Like, where? Like,
well,
we all know, like
we're literally done.
Yeah,
like,
well,
we've got a couple minutes. Go ahead, do it. Where's VR taking us at Verona?
Where's it going? Where's it going?
Where's it going? Oh man, I don't know. Well, we're going somewhere, and maybe it's internal, maybe it's external, but our collective human consciousness is growing one way or another, and whether it's drugs, meditation, or whatever, VR I think is going to be on that list of one of the main tools that people use to expand their consciousness in the future and their experiences. That's it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Beautiful.
That's all I got.
That was great. That was a great summary. Okay.
Yeah, great.
All right. Good. I think that does us then for the ending. Now let's do our photo. If everybody wants to come up here, the security should be off.
Did you turn off the stage?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Run on this.
Oh, I'm in
Hey,
the
there's-
screen.
Oh, that's fancy. I can't even see that screen until
Yes.
I'm up here. Sneaky.
Spend my wave the whole time.
Sorry.
Especially when you were sitting on the ground. You're sitting on the ground,
Like-
you literally could not see
Not back up.
anything.
That's why I stood back up, but I can't see anymore. Anyway.
What should we say?
Oh, that's, yeah.
Peace sign.
Smoke if you got them.
Oh, like.
You can say that, or let's see, infinite potential.
God,
How
like.
about plug in?
I'm getting lag.
Am I in the way
Into
of
the
sounding?
consciousness.
I like plug-in. Plug-in is good. Let's do plug-in.
I should have turned on my
ready?
full body.
Oh wait.
Hold on.
Oh, wait,
I got-
wait.
wait,
I forgot someone.
wait,
I can't believe we
wait.
forgot him.
Wait.
I don't know what happened. I just got totally teleported elsewhere.
Okay.
Oh man. Okay.
Love you, Ghoster.
Half.
All right.
Plug in.
Infinite potential.
Yeah,
I don't know,
infinite
plug in.
potential.
Whoa.
And smoke them if you got
Drugs
them.
are bad.
Smoke him if you got him. Don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Unless you're supervised.
Not all the
What?
drugs.
What?
What?
Am I high already? I didn't take the acid yet.
Do the good drugs once. Don't do all the drugs once.
Artist, have you hit us with the acid?
That's weird. My camera is
That
not
was you.
here.
That was
Weird.
great.
That's
Somebody
weird.
took acid and then went into VR.
Oh, that's why you got teleported.
Oh, okay.
You might have colliders on that object.
Oh. Okay. You were gonna take us somewhere, Artist 3D, right?
Yeah, I'd like to share this piece of the puzzle.
I'm
little
getting
virtual world.
rough.
It's quick. It's a song. Probably explains.
I like
some of
this
the
one.
stuff
This
we've
one's
been
really
talking
cool.
About. I'll
Let's
just
go.
What, put
It's
it
the
over here?
same model, but
Show's
really
over.
interesting shader.
Oh, for the encore.
Let's check it out.
Ooh.
God, I love
Yeah,
GPU
this-
particles.
Try to get in
So
as
much fun.
quickly as you
God,
can.
I wish I could see
because
them.
The beginning and the end
Mhm.
are. Should I create an instance of?
Okay, everyone get close.
Everybody get ready to run through him.
Do you want me to go ahead and
Everybody
stop the
crowd
stream
around.
here and
As-
then do another recording of just this?
any friend in the
Oh,
instance?
are you
Okay.
asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you'd like to. Sure, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
Jordan.
get ready, guys.